This is the city of Ottawa. It's the capital of Canada and the fourth biggest city in the country. It's home to the seat of government, Parliament Hill, the Supreme Court, the National Gallery, the Ottawa Senators, and the Rideau Canal, the world's largest skating rink. Ottawa is well known for its low crime rates, cleanliness, well-educated workforce, and stable real estate market. It also has some of the most expansive bike pathways in the country. And it's a good place for a long nap. I should add one more thing. It has a reputation for being boring. Or if fun does exist, it's somehow hard to find it. In fact, it's still called the city that fun forgot, thanks to a phrase coined by journalist Allan Fotheringham back in the 1960s.
When I was in Montreal, I went to school in Montreal, and when I would tell people that I was actually looking forward to moving back home to Ottawa, they would do that face where it's like, ooh, like really Ottawa? And like the memories they have of this place is their school visit when they were in grade 6 at the end of the year.
It feels old and
stodgy.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It's not lively. Like and I feel like there's no. It's the nation's capital, but I don't feel like there's a lot of culture. Like it feels just, I don't know. It just feels like kind of like the old white man's town kind of thing.
Now, how can you be attracted to a little place on the Rideau where the only thrill is skating in the winter?
Well, Allan Fotheringham's opinion of the city certainly hasn't changed. There's even this clip on YouTube.
I hate Ottawa. I wish I had never moved here. I hate the city so damn much.
Really? I'm sorry to hear that, Michael. Why is it you hate Ottawa? I love living here.
Of course you do. But Laura, you are a boring person.
So what's going on? Why does Ottawa have a reputation for being so dreary? And how did it earn it?
When this place was hacked out of the forest 200 years ago, the guys that dug the canal and that set up shop here and basically built a city out of wilderness made Bytown actually one of the most lawless places in Canada. And it was the place of Stony Monday riots, and it was the place of big-time unrest and rivalries and debauchery and parties and alcohol and a whole bunch of activity associated with lumberjacks. All of a sudden this place finds itself as the capital of Canada. And all these dignified notables arrive and they got to clean it up. I mean, we can't have this as the capital of Canada.
This meant beautifying the landscape of the capital, making it worthy of its newfound status. Then Prime Minister Wilfrid Laurier ultimately wanted to transform Ottawa into the Washington of the North. This ambition, coupled with the introduction of the public service, dramatically changed the culture of the city over the years. Ottawa aspired to be not only the seat of government, but also of culture. In other words, Canada at its best.
There is, I suppose, a certain liability that comes with being a one-industry town. There's also a danger in, in the sense of conservatism, which comes with perhaps a government town. If you look at Ottawa, some people would argue that it's a conservative place, not ideologically, but simply in a personal way. People don't want to take a risk here. There's a sense of impermanence. There's a sense of the transitory here. People don't stay that long here. And as a result, they don't take ownership.
I remember when I was in high school, and right around the time you're about to graduate, and everyone's thinking of what they want to do with their lives. Mm-hmm. And some people are like, I want to be a doctor. Other people, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an engineer. There were a significant number of people who would simply say, I want to work for the government. They wouldn't even specify what department. I want to work in finance. I want to work in the arts. I want to change this education policy. All they were chasing after was security. And part of a city being interesting, or young people for that matter, are those young people being risk adverse. There's this pressure in Ottawa to conform, be like everybody else, look for the government job. It doesn't even matter what it is, just a government job. There's this pressure to have poverty of ambition, a horrible poverty of ambition.
There is such a serious pull from the government sector that non-profits, community enterprises, whatever you want to call them, never really had an opportunity to venture out and try new things because government's just right here. It's right there, so close. The consequence of that is that a lot of really bright, creative people leaving the city. And this is unfortunate. We can't seem to retain our bright young talent. They go to Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver or to the States, where there are opportunities to make things happen.
Patrick John Mills, an artist and gallery owner, faced some heat from Ottawans for circulating what they felt to be controversial promotional flyers.
I had so many people calling my house on the word naked, naked, naked. I put up this poster that said naked, 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 and it was the word naked should not be limited to the nude flesh or model. It should also hope to embody thoughts and feelings relating to truth, naked truth, vulnerability, and mind of pure expression. So the idea was to kind of open your mind with regards to grab your attention and then kind of turn you and grab you, because everyone loves the word naked, but then kind of spin it. But I was doing posters that were provocative, but I didn't find them offensive. You go over and you put up like 300 posters and you just go, oh God, now the phone's gonna ring. And it does, and it did. You know, and and then you have to sit, and each person you go over and you talk to. You give them the courtesy of trying to explain what you're doing, and a lot of the times after having that conversation 10 times in the morning with the same level of patience, you would wish, you know, you didn't have to. Tulip Festival, very family-friendly activities. Everything is very juried and censored to be politically correct constantly. So when it comes time to have something that's more avant-garde or something that's emotionally challenging, that pretty much always gets voted out.
The city of Ottawa, you wonder if they support small business. You wonder if that's part of their mandate at all. You know, straightforward paperwork done. Things get lost. It's just this never-ending process that takes months, and you're just wondering what is the holdup. There's a lot of talk about patios, obviously, with the summer. You know, they have such strict bylaws on, you know, and patios is what brings cities to life. You know, it's a fight. It's a fight to get a patio. So,
if I were to perform without a shirt on, we've actually received complaints because of that. Really? Oh, we're never told. We're never told. It's just the city officials will come to us and they'll be, you know, danger boy. There's a complaint on something.
Still, it may be too simplistic to blame a risk-averse culture for Ottawa's reputation.
You know, when you think about Ottawa, it's not, as a North American city goes, it's not a young city. It's old. Chicago was born about the same time Ottawa was, 1827, 1832. Look at Chicago. I mean, Chicago has a rollicking national and international reputation. Look at Halifax, a little bit older, but clear sense of identity. Look at Toronto, same thing, clear sense. Ottawa is this kind of nowheresville.
Do you remember the bus strike here? 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the winter, for what, 7 weeks, buses were shut down. 7 weeks. In the dead of winter, buses were shut down. In other cities, in Paris, they would have been burning down the Hôtel de Ville. There would have been riots in the streets. And the Ottawans, well, we'll just walk. We'll just accept, we won't be without bus service in a very punishing winter for 8 weeks. And I think politicians know that. Ottawans will accept just about anything. And as a result, they get just about anything.
When I was a young boy, I used to ride my bike. When I was in college, I used to hitchhike, but now I'm an adult. I guess I'll start to walk. 'Cause when you stop to think about it, it's only 1,300 blocks.
Ottawans don't really feel like they own their city. They don't feel, this is a place they come to work for the government, and often they come from other places, so that their focus is on making a living, and home, wherever home may be, Saskatchewan, you know, Maritimes, BC, they don't, it takes a lifetime for them to think, oh yeah, I am really from Ottawa, but by that time it's too late, they're retired. And then there's the local people who've been here for a long time who look upon the government as kind of like an unpleasant turkey. which they're going to pluck for their living.
I wrote a piece called "The Trouble with Ottawa is Ottawans." And you press the button, you file a column. This is the nature of journalism. It appears in a paper, and suddenly my inbox is just full the next day. Usually I don't get this much reaction. I had not had this much reaction to a column I've written in maybe 5 years, and I write every week. And I'm syndicated. So you can hear from some people what they think, and sometimes they like and sometimes they don't, but rarely would I get. And I got, I would say 95% of the response was supportive. I had been arguing that we simply were not taking this place seriously enough. And I was hearing from people who had grown up here, who had left here. I was getting emails from Berlin, where I've lived, and Washington and London and Toronto and Montreal, and places that people had gone to after they'd been here and why they left. I heard from a fellow in New Zealand who said, I really wanted a life in Ottawa, but I just had to go somewhere else to have a real life.
And you have a bunch of national institutions like the NCC and the National Arts Centre who sort of encroach on that sense of ownership. Like in other cities, you don't say, well, we've got the National Arts Centre, we don't need anything else.
What we have, if you look at our Parliament and Wellington Street, much of that was designed in the early 20th century or the late 19th century. And there was a sense there that while we were a small country, we were going to think a little bit bigger. So you have in the parliamentary precinct really a gorgeous array of buildings, those that were built a while ago. Unfortunately, they now compete with second-rate administrative and governmental buildings which just were thrown up in the 70s and the 60s and into the 80s, which really aren't very nice. And the reason they're not very nice, you can ask public servants, the reason is that if they were to build better buildings, people in Halifax or Victoria or Edmonton would say, why are you spending money in Ottawa? Why would you want to do that in Ottawa? Why would you want to create a grand capital? My sense here is that in Ottawa, we don't consider it our government, and frankly Canadians don't look at Ottawa with the kind of a sense of the future that other capitals do. They don't see it as a repository of their dreams and their ambitions for themselves. It's just fine to be what it is, and in many ways it looks like a prairie town.
After World War II, when the government had a lot of money to invest, implemented a large part of the Grébert plan, which basically decentralized a whole bunch of things. The train station, too noisy, too congested, out of downtown. A whole bunch of federal office buildings, too dense, too tall, out of downtown. A whole bunch of different industrial uses, too ugly, too smoky, we'll tear them down. And the city started getting sterilized little bit by little bit, and people started moving out to the suburbs. And all of a sudden you ended up with a downtown that was indeed deprived of a lot of what made it a fun urban place to be. And this would have been Ottawa in the 1970s when that phrase came about.
The National Capital Commission, or the NCC, is a crown corporation that governs the planning and promotion of the national capital and was in charge of carrying out the Grébert plan. They continue to fulfill their mandate today, but not without some controversy.
The NCC's made a lot of mistakes in Ottawa. They built an apartment house at the corner of Wellington and Sussex Drive, which was where the Daly building was, the last example of the Chicago School in Ottawa. They tore that down. Maybe they had to tear it down, but it could have been a public space. It wasn't. I think there's a lot of doubt in this town about what the NCC does, and really does it matter?
If objectively, if you look at any given survey where we ask people, residents or visitors in the region, what do you like? What do you appreciate about this region? Chances are the top elements will be green space, Gatineau Park, the green belt, recreational pathways, those amazing bicycle path and recreational pathways along the shorelines, the beauty of the region, the aesthetics of the region, the quality of events from the Sound and Light Show, Canada Day celebrations, Winterlude. Who's behind the 5 elements that I've just listed? So there again, as much as, yes, we have to listen to people who challenge us, who question what we are doing and who criticize and who bring to our attention maybe some of the mistakes we have made in the past. Objectively, we, I think, all have to be, to recognize the important contribution made by the National Capital Commission to our region and to the development of our region, and to recognize that we are lucky, and I'm talking more as a citizen here, we are lucky to have an entity like the National Capital Commission, who is complementary to the role played by municipalities. And yes, we have to continue improving on the complementarity between the NCC and other public entities governing our region.
Every organization has good moments and bad moments, successes and failures, and terrible things and wonderful things. But what the NCC epitomizes in my mind is the city's inability to take control over its own destiny. In no other city in the world do you say, oh, that's somebody else's problem. We're not going to worry about green space. I mean, Lansdowne Park is a good example. What other city in the world would allow its principal public space, legged to it by citizens, by farmers 150 years ago, be given over to some developers for a mall? I mean, it's hard to imagine that happening in any other capital city or any other city, period.
At the very time arenas are coming in from the suburbs, because city planners are reimagining what arena might be as a catalyst for renewal. I mean, it's debated how much economic value there is, but in Washington certainly there has been some. We were going out of the arena, and we were not connecting that arena with light rail. So now, if you want to go to a hockey game in Washington or a basketball game, you get on the Metro. And the Metro stops and lets you out, and you go right into the arena. The same thing with the Bell Centre in Montreal, pretty much. If you want to go to a hockey game in Ottawa, where the winters are very cold, as we know, you've got to get in your car, and if it's a 7 o'clock game, you probably should leave at 5 o'clock or 5:30, because it could take you a long time to get out from downtown to the arena, and when you get there, you'll pay $12 at least to park, and you may be a half a mile from the arena, and you'll watch the hockey game, and you'll have to probably leave early because getting out is hard, and you'll get back in your car and you'll go downtown because there's almost nothing to do out there anyway. Now, who would have conceived of that? What urban planner of any respectability would have possibly have done that, pushed it and had it approved, except in a place where nobody was looking at what the rest of the world was doing?
I would say that Ottawa has like a lot of great people and a lot of great things, but it's actually probably pretty poorly configured. Like there's a lot of people, a lot of Ottawa's like population exists in suburban areas and also in the rural areas post-amalgamation. And what happens is there's just a lot of stuff that people don't have access to. You know, I take ride shares a lot going back and forth. I came from here from Toronto. And I take ride shares back and forth a lot. And I meet always cool people every time. And they, you know, I tell them about stuff that's going on. They're like, wow, I'd love to go. Yo, I didn't know all that stuff was going on, but yo, I live in Bayshore. You know, I live in Canada. I don't go downtown to stuff because, you know, if there's alcohol involved, they can't drive home. And there's not public transportation to get them back home. And so they don't go out. And we get this impression that there's nobody here.
Ottawa may be a city of 1 million today, but that is post-amalgamation, which only took place in 2001, combining the rural and urban municipalities of Canada, Gloucester, Nepean, and Vanier. In 2009, Clive Doucette argued that amalgamation was not working because of the competing interests and priorities in these different municipalities.
You look at the fall of my mandate, you know, and the North-South Light Rail Line, biggest project of its kind in North America, cheapest line in North America, would have gone all the way from Barrhaven to the University of Ottawa, would have started the changing of Ottawa from a kind of a carbon-dependent, car-dependent, suburban kind of city into a modern city with an integrated transit system. And what happened? We allowed that to be sold off. I think the councillor from West Carleton was the deciding vote against killing that project. $1 billion and our whole future went down the tubes for 20 years. And no one really got as upset as I was. You know, like, I was catonic. I mean, I saw the future of my city going down the toilet. And you're thinking about, well, the city of the fun forgot. Well, one of the ways you make fun is you bring people together in something other than cars. You bring them together easily. That North-South connection would have connected the University of Carleton, the University of Ottawa in 6 minutes with 5-minute service. Imagine the synergies that would have happened.
If you look at Calgary, so Calgary implemented its rail system when there were around 1 million in population. Now they're above that threshold, and they're thinking of other systems. Ottawa at the time, if you look at our population, we had the choice to go to rail, but we decided to go towards a transit way, a bus rapid transit. And it worked fairly well for Ottawa because you think about it, it wasn't amalgamation at the time, right? We weren't all those, downtown Ottawa, the service is great. So you're thinking about it, it worked well for the time. Now our population is growing. We need to respond to the broader city. We need to implement rail. Once you have the rail, the main corridor, then it's easier to make new stations or add new lines.
But public transit is probably a generation behind here. We are continuing to discuss light rail. We may get light rail in 5 years or 8 years or 10 years. There's not yet a shovel in the ground. I've been here 11 years and we've been talking about it that time. They say they'll do it, but they have not yet done it.
Some people insist that fun is hidden in Ottawa, while others say it really depends on where you are and who you know.
It's not in your face. It's there, and you've got a little bit of work to do and a bit of mystery to unravel to find it. It's also, it's very much how you come about moving into a new city. People who move into Ottawa will not find the type of city that they would find in Amsterdam or Berlin or Madrid. Mm-hmm. They will find a city where the fun is out there to be found, but you got to make the effort to go and get it. It's not in your face. And the fun is there anyways.
A lot of people just expect to stumble across the cool things, like that it will be front page of the newspaper, or it'll be tweeted about, or it'll be on Facebook, and they'll just find out about it. And I don't think a lot of people are willing to do that digging to find the things that they want to really focus in on, or they just, with one brush, they'll say, oh, I'm not a theater person. It's like, well, there's a range of theater. There's Shakespeare, there's the Fringe Festival, there's outdoor shows in parks, there's theater at the Great Canadian Theatre Company and the National Arts Centre. So really, theater is a broad thing. You might not like a certain aspect of theater, but there's something out there that will turn your crank, I'm sure.
And I think that the challenge we have in Ottawa is that someone like an Allan Fotheringham probably lived in a bit of a bubble when he was here. It was sort of this square block of Parliament Hill, the Press Club, and the Chateau Laurier. And a lot of people who work on the Hill, they think Ottawa begins and ends with that little, bubble.
I heard somebody on the radio, and she was actually a burlesque performer, so I think this is very perfect, and I wish I could remember her name, but her comment was that a lot of people in Ottawa who work for the federal government or work in industries where during the day they're told what to do and they have to work within very narrow parameters. They don't have a lot of creativity in their jobs in fulfilling the mandate of the Department of Public Works or whatever government department they might work for. So when work is over and they have free time in the evenings, on weekends, on vacation, they have that pent-up creativity, that urge to be creative and to do their own thing and to make their own fun.
I worked for the Federal Civil Service for 31 years, so you're right in the thick of it. And I was, at the, not grassroots, at the working level. I wasn't a manager, I wasn't a high level or anything like that. So you experience the day-to-day comings and goings of being in bureaucracy, and yes, this bunch of work here was created as a result of that.
I rock a lot of parties around town. Like I DJ a whole bunch of different. I DJ this one party, Time Code. I DJ a whole bunch of different events, and I've seen Ottawa get pretty wild. Like I've seen Ottawa wild out, a lot. I see it happen every month. And so it's hard for me to be like, oh, this city's all conservative.
You listen to the national or CTV News or whatever, or Global News, and you'll hear they'll refer to Ottawa when they talk about the federal government. That's one thing that we need to change. When you talk about the federal government or government of Canada, you need to talk about that. It has no relation to the city it's in, right? It's a national piece. So I think from a communication standpoint, we need to clarify that role, that when you're speaking about Ottawa, when you speak, Toronto has that same sort of vein with the provincial government, but Toronto's it seems like a bigger city than the provincial. It seems, it's not, but it seems like a bigger city than the provincial government. Here, we're sort of in that shadow. How can we, from a communication standpoint, leverage that and say, hey, when you talk about Ottawa, you're talking about the city or the region. If you're talking about the federal government, you need to use different keywords, and those need to be clarified.
Ottawa's got to stop comparing itself to Montreal and Toronto. I think we've got a different thing going on here, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a worse thing. Or a thing that's not equally as great. I mean, we both lived in Halifax, so most of the editors of the blog spent a significant amount of time in Halifax, and compared to Ottawa, that's a small city, but has an attitude where it's just going to do its own thing. People there are very active in arts and culture. People there have created this scene that punches above its weight in terms of its cultural power within Canada, and I think Ottawa has the potential to do the same. Not by emulating the bigger cities, but by realizing that the homegrown connections, the fact that you can know most of the people in your artistic community and that you can work together to support each other can be a real source of strength.
There's something about Ottawa that I've realized from doing this is that it is a pretty small community. All sort of little communities overlap. Mm-hmm. And there's this willingness to help each other. So it's not really a competition so much, from what I can see anyway. I'm sure people would disagree with me on that. Right. But that's certainly what it feels like, that these small pockets of communities are all willing to help each other, and I just think that's really great. I don't know if that exists in Toronto or Montreal. I haven't really heard of that.
We have a very strong entrepreneurial sense. We have a very strong arts and culture sense in the city. And the one thing that we've discovered is that we don't showcase these strengths enough. A lot of great things happening in the city, but no one really talks about it. People outside of Ottawa know about these things, but inside the city, we really need to celebrate our innovation and showcase our innovations.
I've seen the change. Like, I started with Ottawa Tourism in 2003, and I've seen a change in the years I've been here in how Ottawans present themselves, and it's been a change for the better. There's much more pride, there's much more confidence in our culinary scene, in our festival scene, in our culture in general scene, whether it's theater or bands. I hesitate to use the word swagger, but there's definitely a confidence that didn't exist when I first started in the job. So that's really good to see. And I think we all have a part to play in promoting what makes Ottawa great.
We have great local businesses that we often forget. Bridgeheads, the Works. You go outside the city and you say, I miss my Bridgehead coffee, or I love the Works burger. And we have tons of those, but we're not good at sharing them and telling the world or even the country that we have that. You think of Montreal, you think of good smoked meat. You think of Ottawa, what do you think about? We in Ottawa know shawarma, good pizza, pho, all the soups and all that, sure, but we're not good at establishing ourselves. And you think of where to go for, I use Montreal as a smoked meat, people know where to go. Even if you're a tourist, you know where to go. You ask someone, where do I go for good smoked meat? They'll tell you. Well, in Ottawa, we don't have that yet, right? I'm only using restaurants. We need to establish that in every sphere, so then we're able to better sell ourselves.
We really want to transform Ottawa into an enabling city, right? A city that catalyzes and supports and connects and enables new ideas. It doesn't shy away from trying new things or new models or new approaches. We need to play more in the city. I find that personally, Ottawa is a bit too serious and not playful enough, right? And it's only by playing and experimenting that we can really try new things and see what works and what doesn't work.
Our biggest employer is the federal government, and we've always used that as sort of an excuse. we need to keep it, put it in our back pocket because it's an asset, but we need to look elsewhere. And we need to diversify our economy, bring in new people, continue that idea of you don't need that process of going to university and working for the federal government to be successful. You can do what you want today, and that can be open your business, that can be working in the field that you want, and you can do that in Ottawa.
I think the way forward for Ottawa is not just different cells of thought, and that's wonderful, but people here, residents of Ottawa, Ottawans saying, we want different leadership at City Hall. We want a leadership which actually sees in Ottawa beyond what is here now, that sees in Ottawa of the 21st century, later in the 21st century, and how to get there. And I don't think it's magic. I think it can happen.
Ottawa is actually a really great place if you're the type of person who wants to do their own thing and wants to start their own thing. Because A, it's very likely that not a lot of other people are doing it. And B, there is an audience and there is an appetite for it. If you can get the word out, people will come and people will reward you.
I think that's really cool of living in Ottawa because, you know, there's always that appeal of living in bigger cities, Toronto, Montreal, but there's no way in hell that I would be doing what we're doing now in those cities, partly because those types of blogs already exist and they're much bigger cities, and frankly, I wouldn't know how to navigate. And not that we really knew how to navigate that world, but
it was much less intimidating. Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of why I opened this place. Partly is to, you know, hopefully inspire people to just go ahead and do their dream. That's the other thing too. I find when people come in, it's like this relief, not necessarily relief, but like this, it's about time.
All the people see of Ottawa is Parliament Hill and, you know, phlegmatic or dyspeptic men yelling at each other. And if that was all you saw of Ottawa, you would say, hey, this is the city fun forgot. And you'd be absolutely sure about it. But that's not my Ottawa. That's not the one I lived in. That's not the one I will die in.